Hello, it's Laura Joy, and I am going to read Genesis 14 and possibly 15. And one thing I do have to say before I read the entire Bible, you have to say that you're going to love your neighbor as yourself despite what the Bible says, because there's some things in here that make it kind of hard to love another person, to be honest. Okay. So, chapter 14 of Genesis. About the time war broke out in the region, King Amraphel of Babylonia, King Arioch of Elasar, and King Kedorlomar of Elam, and King Tidal of Giom fought against King Bera of Sodom, King Bersha of Gomorrah, King Shinab of Admah, King Shemar of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, also called Zoar. This second group of kings joined forces in Siddim Valley, that is, the valley of the Dead Sea. For 12 years they had been subject to the king Kedorlomar, but in the 13th year they rebelled against him. 1 year later, Kedorlomar and his allies arrived and defeated Rephites at Ashtaroth, Carnium, and the Zazites at Ham, and Emites at Sheva, Kiriathaim, and the Horites at Mount Seir, as far as El Paran at the edge of the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En Misfat, now called Kadesh, and conquered all the territory of the Amalekites and also the Amorites living in Hazazon Tamar. Then the rebel kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, and Admah, Zeboim, and Bela, also called Zoar, prepared for battle in the valley of the Dead Sea. They fought against King Kedorlomar of Elam, King Tidal of Giom, King Amraphel of Babylonia, and King Arioch of Elasar. 4 kings against 5. As it happened, the valley of the Dead Sea was filled with tar pits, and as the army of the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into the tar pits, while the rest escaped into the mountains. The victorious invaders then plundered Sodom and Gomorrah and headed for home, taking with them all the spoils of war and the food supplies. They also captured Lot, Abram's nephew, who lived in Sodom, and carried off everything he owned. But one of Lot's men escaped and reported everything to Abram, the Hebrew, who was living near the oak grove belonging to Mamre the Amorite. Mamre and his relatives Eshcol and Aner were Abram's allies. When Abram heard that his nephew Lot had been captured, he mobilized the 318 trained men who had been born into his household. Then he pursued Kedorlomar, his army, until he caught up with them at Dan. There he divided his men and attacked during the night. Kedorlomar's army fled, but Abram chased them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. Abram recovered all of the goods that had been taken, and brought back his nephew Lot with his possessions, and all the women and other captives. After Abram returned from his victory over Chedorlaomer and all his allies, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Sheva, that is the king's valley. And Melchizedek, the king of Salem, and a priest of God Most High, brought Abram some bread and wine. Melchizedek blessed Abram with his blessing. Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has defeated your enemies for you. Then Abram gave Melchizedek a tenth of all the goods he had recovered. The king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give back my people who are captured, but you may keep for yourself all the goods you have recovered." Abram replied to the king of Sodom, I solemnly swear to the Lord Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will not take so much as a single thread of or sandal thong from that which belongs to you. Otherwise you may say, I am the one who made Abram rich. I will accept only what my young warriors have already eaten, and I request that you give a fair share of the goods to my allies, Anar, Eshcol, and Mamre. Chapter 15. Sometime later the Lord spoke to Abram in a vision and said to him, Do not be afraid, Abram, for I will protect you, and your reward will be great. But Abram replied, O sovereign Lord, what good are all your blessings when I don't even have a son? Since you've given me no children, Eliezer of Damascus, a servant of my household, will inherit all my wealth. You have given me no descendants of my own, so one of my servants will be my heir. Then the Lord said to him, No, your servants will not be your heir, for you will have a son of your own, who will be your heir. Then the Lord took Abram outside and said to him, Look up into the sky and count the stars. If you can, that is how many descendants you will have. And Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord counted him as righteous because of his faith. Then the Lord told him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans, who gave you this land as your possession. But Abram replied, O sovereign Lord, how can I be sure that I will actually possess it? The Lord told him, Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, a young pigeon. So Abram presented all to him and killed them. Then he cut each animal down the middle and laid the half side by side. He did not, however, cut the birds in half. Some vultures swooped down to eat the carcasses, but Abram chased them away. As the sun was going down, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a terrifying darkness came down over him. Then the Lord said to Abram, You can be sure that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land, where they will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. But I will punish the nation that enslaves them, and in the end they will come away with great wealth. As for you, you will die in peace and be buried at a ripe old age. After 4 generations, your descendants will return here to this land, for the sins of the Amorites do not yet warrant their destruction. After the sun went down, the darkness fell. Abram saw a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch pass between the halves of the carcasses. So the Lord made a covenant with Abram that day and said, I have given this land to your descendants. all the way from the border of Egypt to the great Euphrates River, and the land now occupied by the Kenizzites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephathites, Rephiters, Rephites. Okay, I'll just spell it. Rephaites. Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. Okay. And that is that. Yes. Animal sacrifices are brutal, and there's a reason we don't do them anymore. So, because God came to earth and he was the sacrifice. So we don't have to do sacrifices like that anymore. Anyway, I will see you later. Goodbye.